Definitely works. Check, check, check. Yeah, so I can see this is what the sound will sound like for people here and hopefully online. So Miyoko's going to check with everybody online. Check, check, check. Yeah, so I can see this is what the sound will sound like for people here and hopefully online. So Miyoko's going to check with everybody online. Check, check, check. Yeah, so I can see this is what the sound will
right, good evening and welcome. My name is Miyoko Chu. I'm the Senior Director of Communications at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And with me tonight are Charles Eldermeyer, our BirdCams project leader, and Ben Welters on his way here. He's our BirdCams communications specialist. And we also have Victoria Campbell here, who worked with us on the BirdCams in the past and is still with us at the lab in a different role. So we're really happy to have Victoria too. So thank you so much for joining us, whether you're here with us on campus tonight or whether you're tuning in on the live stream. You are a community and a family to us, and we really cannot thank you enough for the engagement and the support that you've given us. What we see happening on the BirdCams is really extraordinary. It's extraordinary not only because we can see into the lives of birds in ways that are so often beautiful and revelatory, but also because the emergent discoveries, conservation impacts, and community interactions are really something larger than any of ourselves. In the next hour, we'd like to share with you our appreciation for that phenomenon and take a look ahead to the future. So after the talk, we'll invite your questions and your comments, and we'll probably alternate between the audience here in the auditorium and our live streaming audience. So with that, Charles.
Great. As usual, those of you who have ever watched the cam with a live chat know that often you're trying to watch the cam and do something else in live chat all at the same time. So welcome tonight. And just to echo really what Miyoko said, it's really fun, the times when we've had the opportunity to get together in real life, IRL, as the young kids say these days. And really tonight we thought we would capitalize on the fact Migration Celebration was here in town today. How many of you actually went to Migration Celebration as well? So for those of you online, nearly every hand in this room went up. And that Migration Celebration is a day-long event that happens over at the Lab of Ornithology. To just try and let you guys know how much we do appreciate you and appreciate what we've done, where we've been, and together, and talk about hopefully ways we're going to continue to move together in the future. So as you're all obviously aware, but I can't make my screen, there we go. As I just was posting in the chat, technical glitches are the things that make life interesting. If everything always worked, it wouldn't be that much fun. So the cams take us into the lives of birds across the hemisphere. And, you know, for the first time in history, we've been able to see what happens 24/7, as you all know, thanks to the live streaming technology that we use and the fact that viewers are always watching. Some of you, I know, you watch, we have some of our like 100, percenters in the room today that have watched probably everything that's ever happened on a cam. And, one viewer tuned in and told us that watching the cams is a little bit like doing field biology in their own living room. And we all really liked that idea about how watching a cam is a little bit like doing field biology, and a lot of us have been field biologists in the past. But the crazy thing is the cams take it one step further. Field biology, you almost never get a pretty view, a nice tight view like you get on a camera. You also, though, on a camera don't get to see everything that's happening around it. So that tension between those two things often drives a lot of what we talk about on the cams and what we learn from each other, sort of thinking about and questioning. So the images up on screen here are from cameras that we've streamed either by ourselves or with collaborators over the last 12 months. You probably recognize a lot of these species, and if you don't, you're going to see probably some highlight clips throughout this talk, and we'll give you a little bit of an example. So more than a million people tune into the cams each year, and over the last 6 years, that means millions of people have watched. Collectively, we've been watching these cameras for about 4,000 years worth of time. Okay, we're talking Egypt, right? We're talking pyramids. We're talking that just in these 6 years, just on our cams. We're not talking the cameras, all the other cameras that are out there. So imagine that impact. People learning about the natural world. And we're not just watching. As we found out very early, people like to communicate about what they're seeing. And we get emails, tweets, Facebook posts, live chats, people talking to each other, people talking to us all talking together. And it's a crazy new medium for understanding the world. And then some people even decided they wanted to spend more time volunteering And we really wanted to thank all the volunteers who have helped make this CAM experience what it has been over the years, whether that's leading chats, tweeting out your observations, operating the cameras, as well as the birders on the ground that have spent so much of their time following around the birds and finding out what happens to them off camera. So if you'd like, if you're here in the room and you've ever volunteered, you're a birder on the ground, if you'd like to stand up and just let everybody know, I'm not going to make anybody stand up. And if you're out there in the chat, please feel free to give a shout out so we know you're out there too.
Volunteers, birders on the ground, we'd love you to stand up and wave. Yeah.
You know, and some of these people have traveled hundreds or even thousands of miles to be here. And to those of you online, we had a nice group of people standing up in here, and some of them had to be dragged up. So, you know, and really what's brought us, one way that we kind of thought about this talk is just science, discovery, conservation, community, these themes that keep on bubbling up every time we have a camera or a conversation. But it all kind of starts with that magic moment of being able to see birds up close without disturbing them. You know, we're drawn in by the surprising, delightful, and unexpected scenes that just unfurl in front of us. And what I loved about this clip of the great horned owl in Savannah, Georgia, is some of you might know that great horned owls make a threat display. She's basically right now posturing to a bald eagle that flew by. You could, if you heard earlier in the clip, you could hear one call and then she popped up. But if you've ever been on the receiving end of one of these threat displays, you always see it from the other side because they're pointing at you and they have these bright yellow eyes and everything is super camouflaged, you know, tiger of the skies. Yet in this video, which seems to have just stalled, let's see, should get to the point where you can see her eyes when she comes around, but you'll have to trust me on this. She turns around and you can see these bright yellow eyes. It worked great in the warm-ups. So that unknown, just even like now, you know, without disturbing them, getting to see things from a different view. We're also fortunate to be able to see natural behaviors completely unscripted. You know, I had always known that albatrosses performed these elaborate ritual dances as part of courtship. But the first time I saw it live, I mean, I'll never forget that. But then I got to keep watching it every year that we've run this albatross camera. And I have never once gotten tired watching it. The neat thing is it's you know, 6 hours or 5 hours shifted from our time. We'll get the kids to bed. We'll be sitting down after a long day of doing whatever in the middle of winter when it's been dark for hours and hours, and sit down and I can flip this on, and every once in a while, like, two birds come walking in, the grass is green, the sun is shining, you know, everything is beautiful, and these birds are dancing for you and they don't even know we're watching. So I know they're not actually dancing for me, they're dancing for each other. And that's a really neat feeling. Especially when you think about how long-lived these birds are, the longest lived species that we know that's still breeding in their 60s, they can get up to, and it takes them a long time to master that. So watching these birds practice endlessly or reinforce a bond almost endlessly on cameras is an amazing experience. We get to see touching scenes like this shot of Ezra presiding over the hatching of one of the eggs back in 2015. I think it was the only time when he was there when it was actually hatching. And unlike Big Red, who was a great mombrella of blocking the camera, this is the first time you really got to see this scene, and Ezra's the one that let us see it by stepping to the side. We had never seen it in such detail. We'd never looked at sort of this interaction between the adult bird and a young one hatching out. And also that juxtaposition between this incredibly efficient predator that can tear a bird to shreds, how gentle it can be. And we'd see that time and time again as these birds fed their young, tearing off just the right size piece of meat, you know, to feed them. And even one of our, you know, super common birds in North America, the American robin, was captivating when we just took the time to watch it. This was a camera we were able to set up very quickly this spring, nesting on the building. And everybody knows that they eat worms, but I don't think people knew much about something called fecal sacs. And it was a really fun conversation to have with people. So we knew they ate worms, you know. But this happens in lots of passerine birds, And it's a great opportunity to talk about why it happens, why they're eating them. What was that? We had someone ask if they were why were the babies laying eggs? Why were the adults eating them? You know, and that's a perfectly reasonable way to look at what's happening, you know? So this natural world that we're able to watch all together just winds up generating all of these shared observations and conversation starting points. And away from the nests, we also got to watch a spectacular assemblage of birds at the variety of feeders that we have cameras on, as in this clip from the West Texas Hummingbird Cam. And this camera gave us all tons of identification challenges. You've got a dozen species, you've got different age birds, different sex birds. Some of them look very similar to each other. And it was just a reminder to me of how much diversity there was in all corners of the world. Because when I landed in El Paso to install this camera, it's about 3.5 hours away from El Paso, you would not expect there to be a bunch of life living around there. It just looks barren, it's desert. But you get up a little bit into the mountains, a little bit of water, and it turns out there's hummingbirds streaming through there during migration. And to be able to sit there and watch, you know, right as a researcher is basically studying these birds, seeing the bands on their feet, it's really neat. And crazily, this camera last year had the very first record of an amethyst-throated hummingbird for the entire United States. Just happened to fly to our camera, our little camera down in West Texas. So you never know what's going to be around the corner. So it all comes back to this idea that anyone can make a new discovery any day, especially when it comes to watching species that haven't been well studied before. This was a green and white hummingbird nest in the hill, basically right below Machu Picchu. And it's actually a fairly common species in that part of Peru, but it's never actually been described. It's breeding. And so in this clip, you're going to see the first time anyone's ever watched one of these guys fledge, you know, that moment of fledging. And about an hour later, the other one fledged as well. But nobody knew how long they stayed in the nest even. You know, nobody knew how many feedings it took. And between the recordings we made and the observations that were shared with us from viewers, we're able to describe this, and hopefully we're going to publish this at some point in the future. And even watching common species like the great blue heron yielded routine surprises. And these are events that field biologists would rarely see because they happen infrequently or they happen at night. So this is actually a scene at 3 in the morning. We have this camera that was great. It could use starlight to give you a nice color image in the middle of the night. And in the middle of the night, a great horned owl swooped in and attacked this incubating heron. So let me play the clip here. Oh, it sounds awful. Right? If anyone ever doubted that birds have evolved from dinosaurs, right? To me, the juxtaposition of this bird that you think of as being stately and elegant and a master fisherman turning into this, you know, crazed defender of in this case, her nest, all puffed up, the rage almost that you can imagine being in that call. And that was a call that we don't even have a recording of in the Macaulay Library of Sounds and Video. And when I woke up at 5:30 in the morning, I had emails and phone calls waiting for me because someone had been watching, okay? And we might have missed this. You know, if we're scanning through footage very quickly, it's possible you could have missed this because it literally happened in 15 seconds, you know? So between the people watching everywhere and the technology allowing us to watch everywhere, we capture these things often in the middle of the night that surprise us. Another surprise, this was playing in the reel at the start, was on our Texas barn owl cam, where one night, it's looking like there's kind of a lag in the playing of the clip. So you can see in the upper left corner there is a view of the outside of the box. And sorry, upper right corner. And a snake, a rat snake, attempted to come in and predate the nestlings. And we can see this because of infrared lights, but those lights are invisible to the birds. Okay, so this is happening in essentially pitch black. There may have been a moon that night, so maybe there's a little bit of light that managed to find its way into this box, but she knows something's there. And you can see that snake now coming down towards the entrance. And in a flash, she is able to hone in on that snake and evict it from her nest, all in the dark. And no one can actually go along with a barn owl as it hunts and sort of see the world through its eyes. But technology like this and the opportunity to see it actually gives us a sense of at least what their ability is. You know, that this bird in near darkness can just pinpoint accuracy hit that snake. It was just, to me, mind-boggling. And last year, a viewer even spotted a flatworm descending into the burrow of the Bermuda petrel on the petrel cam, the Cahao cam. And this happened again in the middle of the night. And you might not think much about a flatworm, but it turns out there are some flatworms that will eat flesh. And that this could have been for a bird for which there are only a few hundred of in existence in the world. And every aspect of the management revolves around making sure these birds that are in the burrows have the opportunity to fledge. We were able to the next morning, literally first thing, got our collaborators down in Bermuda on the phone, talked to them about the risk in this. They said, yeah, this could be bad for the chick. We were able to go back and review the footage. And we were able to actually see that small little flatworm just land and then make its way out the burrow. It actually wasn't at least interested in the nestling. It was the first time that's ever been seen in these burrows by biologists. So now they're aware of it. And that's another one of those kind of occurrences that would be very hard to see if we were just scanning the footage kind of quickly for major events that might be happening. So human eyes, your eyes out there, amazing resource for people like us and you trying to understand what's happening. Sort of thinking a little bit more about this idea of being a field biologist in your own living room. Thousands of people spent untold hours living the life of a lance-tailed mannequin researcher, patiently watching a branch most of the time until a male or female arrived and a flurry of activity followed. And people watched this enough that they got the ability, at some point to realize when things were different than what should be sort of quote unquote normally happening. Why are these two males spending so much time sort of aggressively jumping at each other, right? And they'd write out and ask, this isn't what normally happens when they're there. And it turns out on this display perch was this little bit of a power struggle unfolding across the whole year where there's a beta and an alpha individual there, but another presumably bird that thinks it's an alpha was trying to sort of edge in on this display territory and possibly take it over. So we don't know what's going to happen next year. These birds tend to live a long time. They don't migrate. So hopefully we'll get an opportunity to see these same birds next year and see what they're doing. And then, in addition to sharing these really infrequent events, viewers also showed that you could really comprehensively chronicle all the details needed to sort of draw a very detailed picture of what's happening. And a prime example of this was prey deliveries on the Cornell Hawks cam. For those of you who don't, I think probably most people here know where the Cornell Hawks nest, but it's literally about 300 meters that way, 250 meters that way along one of the parking lots that we showed you on the map where you could park. So we knew that they'd be bringing prey to the nest. We knew they're like chipmunks, but even when we know that, sometimes something unexpected happens in those prey deliveries. So in this case, there's a live chipmunk brought back. Maybe he played dead. I don't think he realized that he was 95 feet up in the air. And if my memory serves me right, well, the clip was supposed to go about 3 seconds longer. Both adults dive off after the chipmunk, and he's brought back up a few minutes later. So even though we knew that they were bringing chipmunks, it was kind of a neat thing to see. And one of the ways we found out about that is on Twitter. So for the first couple of years, a lot of this information was being shared on Twitter. And you can see here on the left side, here's somebody tweeting about that live chipmunk being brought to the nest, as well as some other chipmunk deliveries down there. So for the first 2 years, we had actually a very comprehensive timeline just in our Twitter timeline of what was being brought. And then that evolved in the third year into like a cloud-hosted spreadsheet that had auto-completing totals. It's totally volunteer led. It's totally community overseen. It wasn't us. We said simply, I remember saying it'd be great to get a little bit more information about, what's coming to the nest, and a little bit more easier because I'd have to go through the Twitter timeline and pull all that information out. And when there's maybe 4,000 tweets, it just takes a long time. And this was all done by the community. And just to point out too, if you look down there in the bottom right, one of those food deliveries was pizza for Carl and Baguette there. That's why I love this screenshot. So they were there doing some live streaming, and even the prey deliveries to them got chronicled sometimes. But what we were able to do with that is actually then start to look at this information. It doesn't exist in this form in the literature. Nobody has a census from 4 years from the same 2 birds with the same number of young that all fledged successfully. And so just, we were able to start looking at the data and saying, okay, well, what patterns are we seeing? So in this chart here that we have up, there's 4 different panels there, 2012, 13, 14, and 15 from top to bottom. On the y-axis on the left side here is the prey mass. So we used sort of standardized masses for each of the prey items that they would bring. And then along the x-axis is the season day. So starting from the first day of each year, going all the way until fledge, till the first fledge. And the green bars are Big Red, and the blue ones are Ezra. And so what you can see, number one, if you look at Ezra's contributions across the years, it's amazingly consistent. You see blue every day pretty much at a particular level. It's around 400, often between 400 and 600 grams of food brought per day. And then you see sometimes these big peaks that often involve really good pigeon hunting or rabbit hunting. But that changes each year. There's no totally even way that it's described each year. We can also look at, well, how much total did each of them contribute? So again, here, the green is Big Red and the blue is Ezra, but you can see that Ezra some years accounted for almost 81% of the prey mass brought to the nest, okay? And we can break that down a different way. We can look at what kinds of prey were being brought. And then these ones at the bottom, those big purple wedges, that's the only one I'm going to talk about right now, but those are chipmunks, okay? And I thought this was a really interesting thing. Catch 100 chipmunks, how many are you going to catch the next year? About half. Catch 120, what are you going to catch the next year? About half. And I don't know if that's reflecting changes in the chipmunk populations, but you can definitely imagine that impacting them. And so even a chipmunk researcher might actually be interested in these kind of data because they show just one pair of hawks, what they're able to pull out of the environment. And so we're working on continuing to summarize these data. I actually gave a talk about this at the North American Ornithological Conference last year in Washington, D.C., and we're hoping to prepare a manuscript for publication so that other scientists can learn from all of the effort that the community has undertaken over the years. In the same way that you've gotten to have a taste of field biology from your own living room, you've also gotten the chance to converse and interact with people studying these birds. And so you've been able to ask questions, share observations through live question and answer sessions. So we talked to, at the top there, biologists working with California condors, studying small birds and nests, as well as ospreys out in Montana. And each of these opportunities, those experts also really looked forward to, because it was a great way to learn what people are questioning and wanting to know. And so we hope to continue to do more of those in the future because we get a lot of great feedback from people that they like them. And so thank you guys for just being such great participants in those question and answer sessions. I think I'm going to have Ben come up and take over from here.
All right. Thank you, Charles. And just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody else here for coming this evening and joining us online. I've been with Bird Camps Project for just over a year now, and it's been the most overwhelmingly positive experience that I could ever imagine. Being a part of viewing the lives of these birds as well as a part of the community as well. So I have to thank everyone for that. Well, we know that these birds show us so much through their impacts on science and the discoveries that we see through watching the cams. But one of the most striking revelations that we have is being exposed to their intimate lives and just the determination that they have to survive and raise their young in the face of so many challenges. The reality is that birds face challenges all the time, whether it's through predation, through low food availability, harsh weather conditions, and even things that are like human-caused threats. And the risks are even greater during the breeding season when they're trying to raise their young. And there's really no better example of this than back in 2012 when we all watched a blizzard roll through Ithaca and roll through Sapsucker Woods on our heron cam. We can just see in this time lapse that the snow is building up and up and up and almost covering the female heron as she's incubating her eggs. But what do we see? She just gets up, shakes it off, sits right back down, doing what comes natural, doing what she's determined to do, and that's keep her eggs warm for the next, to give them a chance at life. So we witness these type of things all the time on the cams, and the bird's ability to persevere in the face of difficulty is really inspiring. And along that same vein, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this moment. It's often referred to as the Dad Brella moment on our Cornell Hawks cam. This is when, during a April rainstorm, Ezra actually zoomed up to the nest to shelter Big Red and their eggs and young hatchlings. All of the eggs hadn't hatched out yet. But you can see that this amazing moment brought us all a little shelter together. And it's something that we can all really be inspired by. Not only the devotion between a mate and his partner, but also the devotion of the parents to their young in the nest. And this was no short rainstorm. They were hunkered down here for about 30 minutes, keeping their eggs warm and sheltered from the cold weather. But we also know that natural conditions can sometimes be too powerful to overcome. There's no better instance than back in 2015 on our Hellgate Osprey cam in Missoula, Montana, when a sudden and powerful hailstorm came raining through Hellgate Canyon. And you can see these devoted parents, Stanley and Iris, the osprey pair, trying to shelter their eggs from this bulleting hailstorm. It's amazing just to watch how powerful it was. But ultimately, it was too much to overcome, and unfortunately, all of their eggs became damaged, and it ended their chances for the breeding season that year. But what it didn't stop was, didn't stop us from watching. We continued to watch the ospreys. They rebuilt their nest from this hailstorm. They stayed together through the rest of the breeding season in Hellgate. And then they eventually kept interacting, bringing fish to the nest. They kept reinforcing their pair bond despite this loss that they faced during the breeding season. And their resilience in this case is really something that resonated with all of us in the community. We also know that the challenges that these birds face aren't always from nature. Sometimes they come from the impacts that humans have on their environment. And while we're sticking in Hellgate Canyon, we know that ospreys, when they're building their nest, they collect all sorts of things. They bring sticks, moss, pine cones, greenery, but sometimes they also bring man-made materials like baling twine, fishing wire, synthetic netting. And these are all things that can be very dangerous to the ospreys themselves and their chicks, especially if they get tangled up. So lo and behold, Louis, the male on the osprey cam this year, did just that. He brought in some synthetic netting to the Hellgate nest. But because our birds are so lucky to be on cam and have such a wonderful community surrounding them, we were alerted within the minute that it happened by both our volunteers and our community members that are watching. And here you can actually see that we were able to contact our partners, the Montana Osprey Project, who work with the Hellgate cam. And they were able to get out a lift and up in the nest within hours to remove this obstruction and help the ospreys continue to breed or continue to start building their nests that year. And through the community's growing support and awareness of these problems, there's a real inspiring message here that not only have you helped birds like these, but it also helps projects like the Montana Osprey Project continuing to address issues like baling twine and promoting awareness throughout Western Montana and the country. Many viewers were also a bit confused during the first year of our Laysan albatross cam on Kauai, when a young albatross named Kaloa Kalua actually regurgitated a bolus of indigestible material on camera, and it contained over 30 pieces of plastic. Now you can see here is the bolus that the young bird regurgitated, and it contains some squid beaks, which are sort of natural indigestible material that they regurgitate naturally. But we also see up to 30 different shaped pieces of plastic and pollution that their parents picked up in the ocean. And the possibility of plastics and trash even being an issue for the species that spends nearly their entire lives over the Pacific Ocean foraging was a new concept to a lot of people. They didn't realize just how much plastic is in our oceans and that seabirds even went to ingest it. And even though researchers are still trying to understand the impact that these plastics actually have on this species, we know that it's estimated that up to 5 tons of plastic are being accidentally fed to their nestlings on Midway Atoll, where the majority of the breeding population of the Laysan albatross breed every year. And after learning about this hazard on cam, it really hit home for a lot of us in the community. Some viewers wrote in about swearing off plastic. They wanted to know, how do we stop this problem, or what can I personally do to help these albatross? And through everyone's observation, we started to ask questions. We started to get feedback from one another in the community, and viewers across the world started becoming part of the solution just by watching these cams. One viewer even wrote in that it's literally changed their lives learning about the plastic pollution problem in our oceans. And nowhere does this reality of the risk of a man-made environment become clearer than with our own Cornell Hawks here on campus. As I'm sure most of you are aware, in multiple years, as you can see, many juvenile hawks have been injured or killed due to collisions or interactions with other man-made hazards on campus. And this all sadly eventually culminated with Ezra's collision injury and death earlier this year, right before the breeding season. And we've learned together and prepared for this reality that most juvenile hawks don't live past the first year. But understanding the causes of why it happens, seeing it play out through the efforts of the camera and of our community, our birders on the ground who have tracked and followed these birds on a daily basis, it really drove home this topic for all of us. And now what we're showing here is a bit of a haunting image. This is actually a collision from the juvenile G3 back in 2016 when it struck a window of the bus shelter on the right here. And you can actually see the imprint that it left on the shelter with its feathers and its bill down at the bottom. Window strikes are estimated to kill 599 million birds in the United States alone each year. And however, the good news is that making windows safer is an easy thing to do. And it's something that any of us can do, anybody in the community, anybody around the world. And many people are now helping to raise awareness because of what they've seen watching the cam and learning about this hazard in the community. One viewer wrote that with the death of G3, everyone started researching bird strikes and helping to learn options to prevent them. This particular event led to an effort to research the best ways to mitigate the risk that these actual bus shelters had to our hawks on campus. And thanks largely in part to the help of our birders on the ground, Carl and Cindy, both shelters near the hawk nests were fitted with a rather stylish design of bird tape. And it was applied according to the most recent research on how to reduce collisions. And before this all happened just weeks after the collision and before the next season was upon us, making sure that these shelters no longer posed a risk on campus. However, we know that there is still a lot of work to do. Since birds on campus and in these urban environments come in contact with these windows and hazards on a daily basis at every turn, we know that from this event, the Hawks have become an ambassador for our education. They showed us why it's important to do more and what we can actually do to help. Also, in some instances, we know that the birds on cam are actually a member of a species that's faced challenges for years, including even being driven to the brink of extinction, like our California condor here on the California condor cam. And it's really interesting because it's a species that continues to require ongoing management, even in order to maintain just a sustainable population in Southern California, Arizona, Utah, and Baja, Mexico. In fact, the cameras that we use to show the condor cam are actually utilized by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and their partners at Santa Barbara Zoo and everybody at the Condor Recovery Program to monitor these nestlings as part of a nest management strategy in order to increase condor nesting success in the Southern California population on the condor cam. And in 2016, last year on the cam, tens of thousands of viewers actually got to witness the nesting of one of these magnificent birds. And they saw firsthand the opportunity to learn the backstory of how much effort it actually takes for these birds to succeed in the wild. The Cofort's Ridge pair, who was on our cam last year, had laid an egg and successfully incubated for about 2 months' time. And it was about a week away from hatching. We were just about to launch the cam, and the egg disappeared from the cavity overnight. It was likely taken by a predator, but because we were watching, luckily, biologists were able to rush into the nest site and insert a fake egg in order to keep the adults interested in incubating. And it actually worked. Then the biologists would return to replace the fake egg with a captive laid egg from the captive breeding program at just the right stage before hatch. So let's take a ride with these condor biologists in this clip from 2016. We watch them descend into the nest cavity. The adult flies out. They come in and replace this dummy egg with one that's just about ready to hatch. And this is really amazing. The female enters right after the biologist leaves, and it resulted in a net positive for both the adults and the possibility for the chick within that egg to add to the wild population. In the same vein, we all glimpsed into the otherworldly burrow nest of the Bermuda petrel on our Bermuda petrel cam this year on Nonesuch Island, Bermuda. This is one of the world's rarest seabirds. And in fact, it was even thought to be extinct for over 300 years before nesting populations were discovered in 1951. And now that they're clinging to survival, it's only thanks to the Bermuda government, the biologists working every day, tracking the nesting populations, the nonprofit organizations, and the people in the community just like you who are bringing awareness to this bird and learning about their struggle to survive. We often watched as the nesting on cam was checked upon by Bermuda Department and Natural Resources Terrestrial Conservation Officer Jeremy Medeiros, who manages the entire breeding population of this species. And his work ensures that each chick has the best likelihood to survive and have the opportunity to fledge and become part of this breeding population. And we all eventually cheered a little bit wistfully when it climbed out of the burrow for the last time and fledged over the Atlantic Ocean, where it would spend the next 3 to 4 years of its life only to return back to Nonesuch to try breeding for their first time. So here's just one of those clips where
heavy enough so that even hurricane force winds
one of the many times Jeremy came in to check on the petrel, just a little fluff ball at this time.
It's obviously been
he actually opens up the top of a man-made burrow, which the petrels nest in. And these are really exciting times because we got to see the birds in natural light. And he would actually pick it up out of the burrow and explain as he took measurements and told us about how the development of the chick was going. And gave us sort of a time frame of when we would expect it to fledge or when we would expect it to lose its natal down.
And so this is basically a,
so it was a really
6-day-old
cute little fluff ball, this one. So as we mentioned earlier, one of the most powerful aspects of the bird cams is that they allow people from around the world to share in very real experiences shown on these cams. These experiences not only, I'm gonna pop out here real quick, they not only build connections between all types of people, but also all over the world. And I'm just gonna show you a quick photo. Or a quick video here. And many of these experiences are shared back with us as well, including this 6th grade class whose teacher featured the red-tailed hawk cams in class. And in this clip, they're watching the very same clip we showed you with Ezra and his new hatchling earlier in this talk. And I'll just let you watch.
No, you sit down. Oh, he is so close. Blocking the way.
So it's so amazing seeing all those young people excited about birds and science, and their excitement is truly infectious when you get to have those things from the community shared back with us. The experiences with these birds also inspire people in many different ways. As Charles mentioned earlier, it makes people inspire by volunteering their time, but also by expressing themselves through art, poetry, and literature. And as you can see, we've received just an outpouring of art throughout the years across all of our cams from people of all ages expressing their love for birds and looking to give back through their spirit of community. And over again, we've also been touched by the passion and generosity of viewers, such as David Cohen, who's here tonight. You may have seen this Ezra, for those of you who are here, you may have seen this Ezra sculpture out in the lobby earlier. It's absolutely amazing. And also Karen Lobel-Fried, who created this block print of Laysan albatross as part of her book that's inspired by the Laysan albatross titled A Perfect Day for an Albatross. Both artists have decided generously to sell these works and donate the proceeds to support the bird cams. And we'll definitely share more information about these works on our bird cams website in the coming weeks for those of you who aren't here tonight. For those of you who are here, you can also see the pieces themselves out there for more information. And of course, we're also very grateful for the gifts of our birders on the ground or our bogs, who have spent countless hours outside on campus with the Cornell Hawks, tracking them, updating the community about their adventures through photography, through live streaming, through different blog posts. And we've asked them all to share one of their favorite captures or memories throughout the years with everyone tonight. Carl and Cindy Sedlacek, who probably spent one of the most times following Big Red and Ezra over the years on campus together. They are so dedicated that they also blog about the birds and do a live stream with the community about the hawks when they follow them around campus. They shared this striking image of Big Red and Ezra with their red tails fanned out for everyone to see when Ezra greets Big Red atop a post as they shared time hunting together in the Cornell plantations. Christine Bogdanowicz on the right, who's collected a jaw-dropping gallery of photos of the hawks over the years, shared this moment of Ezra when he seemed as if he was just posing for the camera for her in front of an ivy-covered wall on Cornell campus. Ferris Akel, who also conducts a weekly live stream from our Sapsucker Woods and is also live streaming tonight. Thank you, Ferris. Shared that his experiences with the Hawks have taught him that there's an entirely new and beautiful world right here on campus with the birds, if we only take the time to sit and look. And Suzanne and Wood Horning, who are always counted on for an update with the Hawks on campus. They recalled a family moment that they shared with Ezra and G2 during a squirrel hunt. And we often hear from community members not only about what they learn about the birds on cam, but how the birds experiences teach them about their own lives. Here, we see that one cam watcher's respect for all creatures on Earth here has grown by watching the cams. One faithful osprey watcher says that ospreys are so resilient. If they can get through what they do, then we can do the same. And one viewer even found a little Zen moment from watching the Cornell feeders and learned how to be calm and quiet during a busy day. And one viewer even wrote in saying, "Thank you for the wonderful view of these great birds. I'm 81 years old, and you've given me a view I never dreamed I would see before." And the views from these cameras are views that none of us would have ever seen from this perspective before. And it is an experience that really binds us all together, sharing what happens with these birds. And we know that one thing is for sure, it's that the cams provide a keyhole into the most intimate times of these birds' lives. They show us a whole new perspective on nature. They teach us things about our own lives. They also can be counted on for a surprising revelation or even a glimpse into the unknown at times. It's an idea that's been captured in a simple refrain from our HawkCam community, and that's look up. As a tribute to Ezra's legacy, many of you and many people in the community have donated funds to create an educational panel for a new sustainability trail on campus that's scheduled to go up later this year. Our design director is currently working on the panel to share the inspiration about bird life, sustainability on campus, and the message from our HawkCam community, look up. So we hope someday soon we'll all have a chance to witness that in person. And speaking of looking up, let's start looking ahead. I'm gonna pass it off to Miyoko, and she's gonna tell us a little bit about the future of the cams.
All right, well, thanks, Ben and Charles. It was all beautifully said and presented. And I really hope that all of you who've joined us tonight feel as inspired as I do about the power that these cams have with discovery, conservation, and community. It actually inspired our team to work during the last 2 years to really envision how we could build on this incredible momentum by connecting viewers and scientists to work even more closely together on unraveling new discoveries. And so I'm thrilled to let you know that just last month, we received a major grant from the National Science Foundation to do just that. And it was a collaborative effort from the start because thousands of you actually responded to a survey that we put out asking you questions about your interest in participating in science through the cams. And so we used that information in our proposal. The 3-year grant will help us build tools and support for what we call co-created research, which really means investigations that the community and the scientists conduct together, all the way from asking questions to figuring out what's needed to answer those questions to pursuing the answers. So this differs from traditional citizen science projects in which participants typically would collect data for the scientists to use. And instead, we'll be asking you, the community, to pose the questions, and the scientists will collaborate with you to bring your investigations from start to finish. So the lab's web team is going to need to build some new tools so that in addition to not only viewing the cams and being able to chat about them as you can now, that will be able to actually let you comment on footage, tagging the footage in a way that they become data for us. To be able to bring those data out in ways that we can analyze them, and tools for you to be able to visualize the data online as well. So that will all be layered on top of the wonderful CAM experience that we already have, but that will enable those who want to go deeper with the science. It'll be a new kind of opportunity for public participation in science, and it'll generate discoveries not only about birds, but also about ways of supporting questions and investigations that are driven by communities. So in the coming months, we'll share more information about this project with you. We invite you to work with us as we develop it, hatch it, and grow it. By working with you, we hope to chart an even richer way to collaborate across living rooms around the world. And so in closing, Charles, Ben, and I want to express our heartfelt thanks to you, our community, for being co-creators in our CAM experience, past, present, and future. And we really look forward to continuing the adventure with you. Thank you. So with that, we are happy to open up for questions and or comments, even if you just want to share something. We'll alternate between in-person and live-streamed audiences.
Are there any questions here? No? Okay, have a great, no, I'm just kidding. Does anybody have any questions or reactions to tonight? Burning questions. Yeah, go ahead. With last year with the egg replacement, yeah, it's a great question because yeah, so the question was what happened with last year's condor. We showed the footage of the egg being replaced and just all the effort that goes into it, and that bird did make it to successfully fledge, but unfortunately died soon after. And that sort of underscores the challenge of being a wild animal. These birds they take a long time to become adept at what they do. It takes them a long time just to grow. We're talking, months and months of growing time. And when they do start taking those first flights, they can find themselves in a position that's not great to be in, or just not necessarily recognizing that there's a threat. And in this case, it looked like it may have been predated by something. But because the crazy thing is, biologists have transmitters on these birds and they can track them. And the way that works is if a bird doesn't move for like 8 hours or 12 hours, it'll send off a different kind of signal to alert you that this bird might not be well. And so it was a very quick turnaround, but even by the time they got there, the bird was scavenged to the point where it was hard to necessarily know exactly what happened. But on the plus side, you can call it the plus side, I guess. The bird died, but as compared to what happened the year before, which actually the bird died on that one as well, lead was the primary reason 2 years ago the condor fledge didn't make it. And lead's a continuing issue for condors because condors only eat dead things. Dead things sometimes are riddled with lead bullets. And lead bullets for hunting aren't outlawed in all of California and Arizona, just within very small ranges that the condors actually can travel widely outside of. And so at some point between when it was checked on at 4 months and when it fledged at around 6 months, it was delivered essentially lethal dose of lead that really made it unable to survive that fledging process. But this year's bird is looking great, Devil's Gate. So I encourage everyone to tune in. It's been spending a lot of time in front of the camera, stretching its 10-foot long wings. So really excited to hopefully, because all it's going to take is one to make it, and we'll actually have an individual that we'll be able to follow for potentially, maybe not the rest of our lives, but, for quite a long time. 20, 30 years wouldn't be uncalled for. Is there one from the audience, Miyoko? Just want to make sure. Okay. And then we'll go to you next, okay?
So online audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. We didn't have any questions that I saw yet, but we had a really nice comment. And it's one that I wanted to share with all of you and to preface it by saying that educators around the world have done so much to bring these CAMs into their classrooms and to engage their students with it. We hear a lot of feedback from students about how much their students love it. And so this comment, I think, echoes a little bit of what goes on in the classroom. And I want to thank Mohawk for posting this in the chat. My 7th graders have watched the CAMs since 2014. They often mention the Hawk Cam in their graduate presentations. I just put the CAM up on the active board when they arrived in homeroom each morning. It served as a backdrop throughout the day. We did math and science lessons via a Hatch chart for the 2016 G group. So thanks to all the educators out there who are doing things like this on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's great. Did you have a question? Okay, yeah, so the two questions are how do we decide on where, what CAMs we stream, and also whether or not there's going to be another Barn Owl CAM. And I can certainly take the first one first. We're a really small team here. There's actually 2 people that work full-time. It's Ben and I. We work with a team of great people that do a lot of other things along with helping us with this project. And so a lot of our camera opportunities have really come through collaborations with people who have figured out they either have a camera already on a species. For example, the Hellgate Osprey cam initially had a camera on that osprey nest. They reached out to us to help with the live streaming, the messaging, and working together to build a greater impact for that camera. Sometimes it's purely a stroke of luck. That robin nested right outside a window where there was an active internet port, right. That guy there in the eBird shirt in the middle of the room there, it was his office that I put the wire in through the window. Thank you very much. And we were able to very rapidly do that because I had an extra camera sitting around, and the robin is a really resilient bird that lives near people. We didn't have a lot of things to worry about. But in some things like the condor cam, it took 4 years of working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to finally get that online. Same thing with the albatross cam. That was like 3 years of working with the Kauai Albatross Network to find the right spot that had broadband internet. So a lot of it just comes down to logistics. We need internet and we need power, and we don't have the time or funding to really do a whole lot of research and development on how to think way outside the envelope. You want to talk about barn owls? Or you want me to?
I can start it up.
Yeah, go for it.
So I've definitely communicated with a lot of the folks about the Barn Owl cam that was retired last year after a hard 2016 season. And we are currently searching for new opportunities for the cam. Definitely some of the things we want to make sure we have with a species like the barn owl, who is so high risk and prone to starvation and problems with low food availability on cam. We want to have a researcher or some sort of barn owl expert to actually